From the birth of film right up to the present day, cinema has been used to entertain, inspire, and spread messages. This is also the case in DPRK cinema, with films and movies long serving as self-described vehicles of the Korean Revolution. Whether it's telling stories of military action, portraying the nation's revolutionary operas on screen, or simply creating an easy-to-enjoy comedy film about day-to-day life, movies in Korea have had a big impact on shaping the nation over the past century. So, as a channel that knows much more about the DPRK than it does about cinema, in this video I'll be looking through the history of Korean cinema through the lens of 5 films, spanning from 1926 to 1994, each carrying different themes and exploring different periods of the nation's history. So, let's take a look at cinema in the DPRK. This video, as with all my videos, wouldn't be possible without the support from my backers on Patreon. Please consider checking out the link in the description and becoming a patron. The first film we'll discuss is Arirang, released in 1926. Unfortunately, not just for posterity but also for my production of this video, no surviving copy of the film exists. But it's a good starting point as it marks the first major Korean picture with a firm anti-Japanese theme. By 1926, the Japanese Empire had ruled Korea for 16 years, imposing a harsh regime focused on repressing Korean culture. In 1919, 9 years after the annexation, an uprising took place on the 1st of March. Inminbongil, or People's Uprising Day, as it's known in the north, is an important part of the film and its director's past. The film focuses on the character Yongjin, an uprising protester and survivor of the harsh crackdowns which followed. After his eventual release from prison, he returns to his family, a father and a sister, in their hometown. As a result of his stay in prison, Yongjin is severely mentally ill, and when he witnesses his sister being assaulted by a known Japanese collaborator, he's overcome by a vision, subsequently stabbing the collaborator with a sickle. The film ends with Yongjin being returned to prison. This short, silent film has a distinct crossover with the real life of Naeun-gyu, the film's lead actor, writer, and director. Born in Hwaryong, during his early life, he too joined the March 1st uprising, later going on the run, spending 2 years crisscrossing the border between Korea and Manchuria, supporting the anti-Japanese guerrilla forces in their fight against Japan. In 1921, he was eventually caught by the Japanese and sent to prison in Chongjin for 2 years, after which he refocused on his primary passion, cinema, being held up as one of the major forces behind turning Korean cinema from just entertainment into a force that would change the world. (1949) saw the release of the first feature film from the newly established Democratic People's Republic of Korea, called Ne Gohyang, or My Hometown. Coming just after the end of Japanese occupation, this film explores the first of 4 prevalent themes in DPRK cinema, at least that I'm going to focus on in this video: liberation, patriotism, action, and comedy. The film opens with a shot of the sacred Mount Paektu, followed by beautiful shots of rural Korea. However, all is not as serene as it seems. The film is set during the Japanese occupation and opens by introducing us to two main characters: Choi Jusa, an evil miserly landlord, and Kwan Pil, one of his oppressed tenants and a quiet revolutionary. When the landlord's son, In Pal, returns home, a fight breaks out over the landlord's plan to kick all the peasants off his land. Despite being told to run from the approaching Japanese police, Kwan Pil stands stoically, awaiting his inevitable arrest. Locked in prison and forced into a crowded cell, he meets another prisoner, a member of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army, who tells him about the liberation movement and the fear the Japanese have for the Koreans.
싸울 수 있습니다. 우리가 힘을 합쳐 싸우기만 한다면 반드시 기구에 말 것이요.
So, after concocting an escape plan, the two overpower their prison guard and escape into the night. During the chase which ensues, the revolutionary soldier is shot, but Kwan Pil escapes, heading north in search of the famed General Kim Il-sung and his army. Kwan Pil joins with the revolutionaries to launch attacks against Japanese forces in the region, pledging to defeat the Japanese and their Korean collaborators. Meanwhile, back in his hometown, the Japanese have begun rounding up local men and drafting them into the military to fight in their ongoing campaign across Asia.
여보, 몸성이 잘 있어.
Latterly, they even begin drafting women into the army, resulting in Ok-dan, Kwan Pil's fiancée, being drafted. While the oppression by the Japanese is increasing, Kwan Pil and his comrades coordinate a major attack against the local ironworks, a major logistical and propaganda victory for the revolutionaries. Despite an intensive search for Kwan Pil, the secret police fail to apprehend him, and the film ends with the liberation of the village by the revolutionary army, Ok-dan's return home, and her final reunification with Kwan Pil. The through line of the film is, of course, the idea of national liberation and independence from the Japanese. This is a theme which runs through many films in the DPRK, as well as being a major part of the general national consciousness in the country. Independence of the nation and the right to self-determination continues to play a major part in the country today. And this film being produced only 4 years after the end of Japanese rule means all involved in its production would have had their own experiences of the years of subjugation by Japan. The project was also the first major picture to be produced at the Pyongyang Film Studio, officially the Korean art film studio Choson Yesul Yonghwa Chwalyongso. This famous studio complex today comprises of many outdoor sets and has gone on to be home to many major DPRK productions. And this film kicked off decades of movie production in the country. However, just as the new republic was beginning to find its feet, conflict returned once more to Korea. Our next film, 소년 발치산, or Boy Partisans, continues with the theme of liberation, but now introduces new themes of patriotism. Where older films focused on liberating the Korean nation from Japan, this film, released during the Korean War, focuses on the much more tangible idea of fighting for the country itself, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. A major theme at the time, given the ongoing conflict against the Americans. Released in 1951, the film opens with a group of young boys watching over their hometown from a nearby hill as the US military advances. Initially watching with a feeling of hopelessness, they eventually decide that whilst too young to enlist in the military, they want to continue the struggle in any way they can, serving as young pioneers. Soon after, the leader of the group, the young Choi Yong-chan, heads into the town where he finds the population preparing to evacuate, and the soldiers stationed there preparing to make a tactical retreat, leaving the town to the advancing enemy. As the soldiers depart, the Americans arrive, quickly realizing the town is filled with so-called red workers. These communists are an obvious threat to American control over the town, so they enlist the help of a local businessman. Under Japanese rule, he had been allowed to own a large rice farm, in exchange for collaborating with the occupation. So he's considered trustworthy by the US commanders. Later that day, a purge begins, with the order being given that all communists in the town must be eliminated. And what follows is a series of brutal killings of local men, women, and children in the name of local security, followed by an announcement from the US commander that anyone with suspected communist loyalties will be arrested. The next day, with public sentiment in the town clearly anti-American, Choi Yong-chan and his mother are taken to the local military headquarters, where they find Choi's older brother has been captured. Feeling overwhelmed with hatred, their mother explodes in a righteous outburst against the occupying soldiers, resulting in her being shot by the officer behind the desk. Choi leaves in distress, daydreaming about his town and how beautiful it had been before the war. Later, meeting with his young comrades and deciding to form a guerrilla faction to resist the occupation. By day, the boys employ themselves as local street sweepers, working with the US to keep the town orderly. But by night, they begin the work of cutting communication lines and putting up revolutionary posters. As the relentless guerrilla campaign continues, and the US commander becomes further incensed, the former collaborator returns, suggesting all family members of suspected communists should be arrested too. However, on his way home, he's captured by the guerrilla boys and killed. Although this doesn't stop the Americans from putting hundreds of locals in prison. That night, there is a secret meeting between the boys and soldiers of the Revolutionary Army. They tell them the military is fighting in the hills nearby and will soon be in a position to retake the town. A plan is hatched to increase the scale of resistance, and so one of the boys, Shingan, attempts to sneak into the headquarters and steal US weapons for the upcoming fight. However, he he is shot and captured during his attempt, and latterly tortured by the Americans for information. However, after repeatedly refusing to give up his comrades, he's taken outside and executed. News spreads the People's Army are approaching, so the US decides to execute all the townspeople held in prison. But just before they're able to, the army returns, forcing the Americans to make a hasty retreat and liberating the town. This film does not, as is typical with most war films, end with a great victory in the war overall, or even a huge strategic victory. Since the movie was produced during the Korean War itself, there was still uncertainty as to what would happen across the peninsula. This story is not one of winning a great war, but a microcosm. Instead of showing the Korean People's Army fighting throughout Korea, the film focuses on a small victory, retaking a local town. A story which would be repeated across the entire country, as the Korean People's Army, aided by the Chinese military, forced the US military to abandon most of the territory north of the 38th parallel. The film's main themes are that of liberation, certainly, but also patriotism. While the Korean People's Army continue their broader fight against the enemy, the young boys living in the town consider it their duty to resist in any way they can, working together in defense of their country. We'll now skip forward from the 1950s to the 1980s. As the realities of the Korean War moved from an everyday reality to an event of the past, so too were filmmakers able to take more artistic license with the films they produced. The next film we'll look at is 명령 27호, or Order Number 27. And whilst it keeps with the theme of patriotism, it's much more focused on another important aspect: action. Motion pictures in the DPRK, by this point, had a long legacy of being used as a tool for the revolution. This was especially important in the founding days of the Republic, reminding everyday people of the cause of the Korean Revolution. However, as time moved on, this revolutionary undertone shifted from one of fighting for liberation to one of building a new socialist society. Films began to change, with the classic revolutionary stories being joined by fantasy action movies, monster movies, underdog sports movies, and, as is the case with this film, action dramas. Order Number 27 begins not with action, drama, or conflict, but with a team of Special Forces soldiers relaxing in the forest after their training has been completed.
대상물 접근 동작이 어떻습니까? 만점이요. 자, 시원한 단물입니다.
Captain Jang Hyun, a leader of the group, is summoned to the nearby headquarters to be briefed on a potential new enemy Special Forces unit being assembled to attack the Northern forces. The military top brass in the DPRK has decided to beat them to it, and Order Number 27 is to rendezvous with Pomegranate, real name Yong-mi, a young lady already secretly deployed to enemy territory. They must locate the Special Forces unit and destroy it. And thus, the plot of our action movie has been established.
출발은 내일 새벽 3시요. 동무들은 반드시 위대한 장군님의 전사답게 임무를 훌륭히 수행하리라고 믿어.
The soldiers disguise themselves as wounded South Korean servicemen, stealthily crossing the border and boarding a local train. they plan to meet Yongmi at Yongchon Station. However, unable to help themselves watching a young child on the train being abused by locals, a fight breaks out, and the troops leap from the train, missing their rendezvous and being forced to instead make the journey on foot. Meanwhile, a Southern Army major, who found the soldiers suspicious, orders all stations to be blocked, and the supposedly injured group of soldiers to be apprehended immediately. The troops continue their march through the countryside, encountering a small cadre of enemy scouts at a local temple, during which a hand-to-hand combat fight ensues between the two sides. Now being hunted by a huge number of US and Southern soldiers, the troops radio command, who inform them their first contact failed. Arriving in a local town, a second contact attempt takes place at a cabaret bar. However, after being identified, a fight breaks out, resulting in the military arriving on the scene and the team escaping by train in a hail of gunfire. Thinking they've escaped, the chase continues as enemy troops jump from a bridge onto the train, leading to a rooftop train fight until one of the soldiers, Gil Nam, uncouples the train cars, but is shot and killed in the process. The soldiers finally rendezvous with Yongmi and plan their final attack against the enemy Special Forces General Staff. Yongmi heads into the enemy headquarters. However, unbeknownst to her, one of the enemy officers has worked out she's working for the enemy, and a fight ensues. During the combat, she is injured, but manages to escape back to her comrades to report the enemy are moving their headquarters. Time is of the essence, and as night falls, the troops begin their assault, sparking a dramatic final battle between the special forces of the two sides, culminating in our heroes stealing a ship to make their escape back to the north. However, as they depart, the Southern forces launch a helicopter to pursue them, leading to Captain Chang Hyun grabbing onto the chopper's wheel and pulling the pin from his grenade while the helicopter is in flight. Upon their return to the north, officers of the Korean People's Army greet them, only to discover the great toll the mission has taken on the team. They're welcomed back to their homeland with open arms and dramatic cheering. With its blend of action fight scenes and deeply emotional moments, this film is certainly one much more geared towards entertainment of a general audience, although it's still filled to the brim with symbolism and revolutionary zeal. Sacrificing oneself for the nation being a major theme of the film, and perhaps the greatest demonstration of patriotism possible, a key theme across this movie. Finally, we'll look at a film genre many may be unaware even exists in the DPRK. Comedy. The film 청춘이여, or Oh Youth, was released in 1994 and tells the story of 5 daughters living in Pyongyang. Unlike the other films we've covered in this video, Oh Youth is not a high-stakes drama, and certainly not a deep-moving epic. However, through watching the film, we see the values that have become important in modern, socialist Korea, but through the lens of a satirical look at a typical family from the capital.
어쩌라 지령을 내리구려. 이 많은 걸 누가 다 먹겠다고 더 깎으라.
아, 오늘은 경기관 합숙에서 우리 딸들이 우르르 몰려오는 날이 아니나요?
아차.
The movie opens with a picturesque view of Sports Street, its architectural beauty accentuated under the narration of a father of 5 athletic daughters. Each daughter possesses remarkable sporting talents. Se-ok is described as a bit of a tomboy who excels in basketball. Oh-ok, the youngest, is a determined swimmer, always striving to keep pace with her elder siblings. Eok showcases her strength as a weightlifter, capable of lifting an impressive 120 kilograms. Naeok captivates with her rhythmic gymnastic skills, and Ilok, the eldest, dominates the football field. However, we learn from the father's narration that a pressing issue exists in the family, finding a match for their only son, Iho.
서둘러야 해요. 늦었는데. 늦었다?
In the family's bustling apartment, the aforementioned father and his wife diligently prepare a meal in anticipation of their daughter's arrival. The father, brimming with pride, tells tales of their daughter's achievements, all of whom are now living along Pyongyang's famous Sports Street. However, the mother is much more concerned with Ki-ho and his lack of a relationship. Instead of finding a match, he's far too focused on his PhD studies. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the family dinner, it's revealed that the mother has clandestinely assigned each daughter a mission to find a suitable match for their brother, Ki-ho. Despite the daughter's attempts to propose potential matches, the underlying issue emerges: the mother's reluctance to entertain the idea of another sportswoman joining the family. Ki-ho, disinterested in the prospect, subtly hints at his preference against sportswomen, considering them all to be tomboys.
아버지, 이걸 좀 보라요. 이 말괄랭이 같은 것들을. 너 말괄랭이? 야, 너 체육하는 처녀들의 그 열정이 내 눈엔 말괄랭이처럼 보이니? 야, 체육하는 처녀들처럼 근면하고 총명하고 의리심이 깊은 처녀들을 너 어디 가서 골라봐라.
오늘 밤은 휴식하러 가지 않았어.
책임진 동지.
Naeok's intended match for her brother is Kim Eun-kyung, a skilled martial artist preparing for an upcoming taekwondo championship. We soon see Eun-kyung head to the Grand People's Study House, a usual haunt of Ki-ho, in search of a book on taekwondo. This is where Ki-ho and Eun-kyung meet for the first time. Sharing a love of the sport, they take a walk through Pyongyang, ending at the Embroidery Institute. Ki-ho assumes she must be an embroiderer. This kicks off the main narrative of the film, which is far too convoluted to get into in full. But a series of humorous misunderstandings lead Ki-ho's mother to believe he's dating multiple girls at once, Ki-ho's father to arrange a fake mugging, which results in his son falling into the river, the entire family to be involved in a TV documentary about sports, and in the culmination of the entire film, where Ki-ho admits he's fallen in love with Eun-kyung. The film ends with the mother changing her views on early marriage and tells her children not to prioritize getting married until they have each achieved all they want to achieve in their personal lives. This movie is a popular one amongst local Koreans, telling a small-scale story about a local family in Pyongyang. It has its own mix of slapstick humour, Shakespearean-style misunderstandings, but also some genuine tension and romantic drama. Overall, the film is a relatable piece of family life, with some great lines between the mother and father, and a very believable family dynamic, where parents might not always be working in each other's interests, and using their children as spies to further their own projects.
BBC 기자입니다. 김은경 선수는 이번에 제일 강한 적수를 물리치고 우승했는데 지금 무슨 생각을 하고 있습니까?
이 순간 저는 온 세상에 대고 궁지 높이 외치고 싶은 말이 있습니다. 우리는 아버지 장군님께서 계시어 이렇게 온 세상이 부러워하는 사회주의 제도에서, 온 세상이 부러워하는 청춘거리에서 온 세상이 부러워하는 청춘으로 우리의 재능을 빛낼 수 있다는 것을.
All in all, it would be impossible to summarise all of DPRK cinema in one video. And in fact, the best way to get an idea of how films and movies have changed over the years is to go and watch some of them. Since 1948, cinema in the DPRK has served to inspire a revolutionary spirit in the people who watch. In fact, it was the General Kim Jong-il in The Art of Cinema who said, "The art of cinema is not only about entertaining audiences, but also about educating and inspiring them to embrace the socialist cause." This is done in many ways, whether it be educating people on the birth of the DPRK through the anti-Japanese struggle of the 1940s, producing an action drama film about the Korean War and the struggle against outside influences, or creating a comedy film about a local family living their everyday lives day to day in Pyongyang. Each of these films serves to send a message to the viewer. I hope you enjoyed this look at DPRK cinema, and I encourage you to watch not just the films on this list, but any and all movies from the country. It gives a great insight into life in the DPRK, its history, its culture, and what's considered important source for anyone keen to learn a little more about Korea. Please do like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed, it really helps the channel. And as always, my Patreon is linked in the description. Without the support from my backers on Patreon, a lot of these videos really wouldn't be possible. Thanks for watching.